get started. And first of all, if you don't mind introducing yourself and letting us know a little bit about what you do. I did hear you chat about some of it, but I think some people will be just joining us now. So if you don't mind kind of touching on basically what you do, because I won't lie, most of us know this much about gut health. Eat yogurt.
Right.
That's what we know.
Yes. Yeah, sure. And then, look, that's going to be the majority of the population. So, look, I get that the microbiome gut health is an extremely new, evolving field of research.
Okay.
So my background, so I'm Crippen Governor, I'm a food scientist, digestive health advocate, and founder of a couple of different companies, Nourishment Organics, which is all about fermentation. So really around the kind of wild traditional ferments, things like kefir and kombuchas and fermented vegetables, and then allele microbiome, which is involved very much around the microbiome research from a stool analysis perspective. So I look at people's poo samples all day. So in a nutshell, that's what I do. But I do find it very interesting and fascinating.
I don't think I've ever done a live where we didn't discuss poo. And when I looked at what you did, I went, wow, we're going to talk a lot about poo today, I think.
I think it's definitely my area of expertise for sure. But to give you a heads up, and to the people watching, like it was about 8 years ago where I've been in the food industry for about 20 years. So about 8 years ago, my life really fell apart, and I essentially was bullied out in the workplace. I worked for a big multinational food company. I suffered from depression and anxiety for a long, long time. And 8 years ago was when it really came to our forefront, and I was bullied out of the workplace, essentially forced to leave. My marriage fell apart. I found myself in an apartment in the city in Melbourne. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, and in the city in Melbourne, apartment by myself, really on the verge of suicide. And yeah, it was a very, very close call. A very dark period of my life, and fortunately, I had that. Being a scientist, I had an inquiring mind, and I went to a psychologist, and the psychologist was like, "You need to go on some Prozac or Zoloft." Some antidepressant medication, but I didn't really want to go down that path because I thought, well, there must be a natural alternative rather than having this in the shackle of being stuck in a drug for the rest of my life. And it was really just by fluke that I stumbled upon the research by Natasha Campbell McBride, who had an autistic daughter. So her daughter struggling. It was daughter or son? I can't remember if it was daughter or son. But this child was suffering from autism spectrum disorder, and she managed this scientist was amazing. She managed to overturn a lot of these symptoms of autism by just changing her diet. And this was before gut health, microbiome was even a topic of discussion. No one was having conversations about gut health at that time. So in her book, she mentioned that she has a very strict protocol called the GAPS protocols. So gastrointestinal psychology syndrome, that's what it stands for.
Okay.
Very, very strict. And it pretty much involves eliminating a lot of the things that are inflammatory to the body. So I was eliminating processed foods, I was eliminating any wheat, grains, things like that. A lot of carbohydrates. It's almost very similar to your FODMAP style diet that we have, that was developed by Monash University in Melbourne. And that's eliminating things that are typically going to create dysfunction, bowel irritability, bloating. And that essentially changed my life. And that elimination step, and she also talked about kefir. And kefir is a very traditional yogurt type product from the Caucasus region in Central Eurasia.
Okay.
And these people have been doing it for a long, long, long time, potentially thousands of years. And this is a very probiotic rich food. I essentially went onto eBay and just got myself some kefir grains and started making kefir. So you had a question, Dory?
Oh no, I was saying because I've never heard of that before. This is a product I've never heard of. So maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So kefir, the background behind kefir from my research is I think it originally came. It's called a strobe, which is a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast.
Okay.
So if you look at kefir, like the kefir grains which you use to make kefir, and just to clarify, it's not actually a grain.
Okay.
They call it kefir grains because they're kind of little blobs of jelly, if you like.
Oh.
And this substance is actually produced by the bacteria themselves. So it's a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. They self-propagate, meaning that the grain replicates.
Ooh.
So once you get a kefir culture, kefir grain, you have this thing for life. Because all you do is you put the kefir grain into milk, and it turns it into a yogurt dairy-like product.
Ooh.
And there's also there's versions you could do with water where kefir is very good. Yep. So yogurt. I'm just reading the comments as we're going. Yep. And so kefir can be. There's a water version, so if people are vegans, and there's coconut versions, there's almond milk versions. It's an heirloom culture. It's something that scientists like myself can't replicate in a lab. It's far too complicated. It's essentially a gift from nature that really keeps giving because it keeps propagating, it keeps growing. So once you have that culture, you grow more and more, and then people typically gift it to their families and friends and communities.
Nice.
So, amazing. You're comparing a probiotic pill, which has, maybe a handful of strains. The yogurt you buy from the supermarket might have 3 strains. Typically LAB strains, very common. But a kefir culture, imagine this, has 30 to 100 strains of probiotics.
Wow.
This is how substantial this gift from nature actually is. And they found regions of the Caucasus Mountains now, and these people live to a very long age. And it was actually, I can go into the background behind it if you want, Dory.
Oh, please do, because I'm fascinated. This is all brand new information for me. I won't lie. I was hoping I wouldn't offend you by my lack of knowledge.
No, not at all. I mean, we're all going to start from some point, and 8 years ago, I started from this point having zero understanding myself. So I'm very happy to enlighten and share the information. And so I think from my research, it originally came from the Mongols.
Okay.
Because the Mongolian tribes at that very early sort of 12th century, 13th century, were starting to invade a lot of the surrounding areas around China, and then creeping up into Eastern Europe and areas like that. So I think originally what they did is it just would have spontaneously formed in their horse milk, because there were nomadic tribes using horses.
Yes.
And they would make this milk product primarily for alcohol. This is how they got their alcohol production. But they produced this very life-giving product from this culture. And they would even take blood from the horses for nutrition as well as part of their culture. But as they invaded all these regions and they almost conquered, they started to share this information. And then it got into the areas of Caucasus where it became like a staple. It's still a staple in that. To this day, it's still a staple in those regions, in areas like Turkey as well. The word kefir in Turkish actually means feel good. So it literally helped me so much with my anxiety and depression because it literally makes you feel good. And you look at the science behind it. You've got all this probiotic bacteria in it, but you've got a very, very high level of tryptophan, a chemical called tryptophan.
Okay.
Which is essentially a precursor for serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone. So you're giving your body all this ammunition to produce serotonin, essentially. So, yeah, fascinating product. And then it was around 1906, 1907, there was a guy by the name of Elie Mechnikov, this very, very famous scientist, Nobel Prize winner. And he did a lot of work with Bulgarian centurions, like people who were he was obsessed with longevity and not dying. Most people are. So
no one wants to die.
Yeah. So he was exploring these areas of the Bulgarians and the Bulgarian centurions, and he found that they were consuming these fermented milk products. So he was the one that actually is known as the father of probiotics.
Ooh.
So this is the background behind it. And then from then it kind of got into Russia and other areas like that. It became hugely popular. And finally now, late 2000s, now they're starting to get into, in the Western countries.
Well, and it's so new around here. Like, honestly, these are things that most of us have never discussed. And what led me to reach out to you was the other day I came across a video on YouTube, and it said something that blew my mind. So the doctor was explaining that 90% of what goes on with our body has nothing to do with our body itself, our own genetics. He was like, it has to do with the bacteria that live in and on our bodies. And I was like, what? How could that determine my health more than my own genetics? And I thought, I've got to talk to you about that, because the idea of that blows my mind. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, it's very early days, but the science is definitely leading to that conclusion. And the reason being is that most of the genes in your body are actually not your own. It depends on the studies that you look at.
Okay.
Most of it, I think the studies that I've looked at is something like 0.1% is your genetics.
What?
So 99.9% is microbial genes, and that covers things like primarily bacteria. Then you've got viruses, fungi, protozoa, parasites. So there's more genes in your body that are not your own than your actual own genes. From a cellular level, depending on the studies that you looked at now, but you're roughly slightly more microbe than yourself. So you're essentially like a host organism. And there's this whole, in terms of the gut and the brain, it's connected via the vagus nerve. And you have this whole enteric nervous system. So for layman's terms, there's all these nerves in your gut, almost the same number as a small cat. So it has its own intelligence. So that's why it's called the second brain. But then it's also called the second liver as well, because it's so metabolically active. And scientists are even leaning to say, well, it's even more metabolically active than the liver itself. So there's a lot going on in the gut, and the actual microbes are communicating directly to your brain. So they're signaling molecules that they produce to actually communicate directly to the brain. So a lot of your thoughts, the way you feel, your personality is now determined, and it's becoming very predictable on whether you're more. I just recently saw a study, it was a few months ago out of Korea, where depending on the types of organisms that live in your gut, when you map it out, they can predict now if you're more conscientious or more neurotic in personality, because they really shape you. And even things like food cravings and things that you automatically reach for a certain type of food, and you think maybe it's your own impulse, but a lot of the times it's because your gut microbes are telling you. So like things like yeast, like candidas, they'll cause things like sugar addictions, because they want that, but they're telling you.
I feel like saying, you're not the boss of me, microbe. You're not the boss of me. That blows my mind to think that if I have a craving, because you know what, especially when we're doing a ketogenic diet, I have a lot of people, they'll message me and they'll say, Dory, I don't know what's going on. Like, please talk to me, because I'm in a mood and I want to eat all of the things. Like, I'm upset, I'm stressed out, I want to dive head full into a vat of everything I can't eat. Help me. So is this not our own impulses, maybe? Is this something else?
Yeah, there's a combination of things. I think part of it is the microbes themselves, and then other things are just addictions.
Yes.
So things like certain types of dairy products, certain gluten type products produce what we call morphine type products, where you think addictive drugs. So these are the type of compounds that are byproduct of digesting certain types of dairy products and wheat. So that is part of the addiction. The other addiction is the psychological crux that we put on food. Like it's almost like a mental relief eating sometimes when we feel stressed. But a large part is the actual biochemistry and the actual microbes causing the direct addiction by talking directly to the brain.
Excellent.
So it's a combination of those 3 points, I think.
So where do we start? If you are just brand new to learning about gut health, do we need to go get a mapping done first? Is that where we start? Can we research on our own? Because I don't even know where to begin with something like this. And I think a lot of people watching are like, that sounds really, really great, Kerbin. Where do I start?
Where do you start? I think for simplicity's sake, the easiest way to address it, there's some simple things. It's not hard to address digestive issues and gut issues and health issues. The problem is really processed foods.
Okay.
Because since post-World War II, throughout the Western world, we've moved from almost like an agrarian, almost farmer-based food supply to one that's produced by trees.
Yes.
And the issue is that because of this move, there's a lot more. There's firstly they really bastardize fats as well. So factory foods, bastardization of dietary fats, the explosion of sugar in our food supply. Those 3 factors have really driven it, and we're consuming far too much processed foods. We're consuming far too much meat. Not enough fiber and not enough vegetables. So the very simple thing is move towards very fresh meats, fresh vegetables, and that will address go organic.
Okay.
I get it. It's more expensive. Eat within what you can afford. Buy the best that you can afford. So that's always my recommendation. So steer clear of all your fast food restaurants. Learn to cook. Cooking is one of the most impactful life skills that you can ever have, because you pretty much can go to a nice farmer's market or wherever you buy your produce and buy the best produce that you can get, and then prepare that food for yourself. Then with relative confidence, you know exactly what you're putting in your mouth and what you're consuming.
Yes.
I think we've put far too much trust into food manufacturers and food companies, because their best interest is not to keep you healthy.
No.
I've been in the industry and I've seen it very intimately from very large food manufacturing companies, and the impetus is more for them to make profit.
Yes.
And that's the driving factor. And the food industry will use terms like fit for purpose. So essentially, fit for purpose means that whatever target demographic that they have, they make it so it's just good enough that you'll eat it.
Oh.
But there's very little consideration in terms of, and cheap as possible.
Yes.
So maximum profits for them, but very little consideration in terms of the nutrition and whether it's actually good for you or not. And in their defense, if you go to your GP will most likely not even have the understanding of what's going on in the gut microbiome. So how can we expect that our food manufacturers have any understanding of what's happening in the gut microbiome? So it's because the science is relatively new, it hasn't filtered into industry yet. And consumers are not jumping up and down. Consumers are hugely powerful. You want to shift the food industry, you stop buying their products.
Yes.
And they will shift according to what you want.
Yes.
And consumers are hugely powerful because you vote with your wallet. So until consumers in mass scream out and say, well, this food now is not good enough for us, we don't want to give this to our children, the food industry will react.
Well, and let's take a moment to talk about that, because I have gotten up on that soapbox more than one time. And I've told people, you know what,
Yes.
As silly as it sounds, you need to go to your local grocery store and you need to say, you know what, I love spending my money here. I have been shopping here for the last 20 years, but you know what, the quality of the products you're bringing in don't hit the level that I want to supply to my family. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. As soon as you start bringing in the products I want to buy, guess what? I'll come spend my money here again because I love you and I'm just waiting to spend my money here. But you need to step up your game. And if we all do it, guess what happens? They have to go out and get a better product. They cannot put on the shelf the standard garbage and we're going to buy it. But unfortunately, we have to do that as a mass. 2 people, 5 people, 10 people going into the grocery store isn't going to make an impact. When 20,000 people go into their local grocery store and say, you know what, I'm not buying this anymore, get me better products, hallelujah, that's when we get better products. Because it's bottom line for them, right? Like, are they doing research to be like, oh, you know what, I think our consumers want healthier products. I think we should invest some time and really a lot of money in that. You were in the food industry. They do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the really big companies now, like I'm not going to say names of getting sued.
Don't want to name names.
But the really big companies now are starting to buy up microbiome research centers, especially in Europe. I've seen this activity happening. So the food industry knows there's a shift afoot.
Yes.
But they're not going to change till you stop buying their product. They know the research is so compelling and it's going to shift, but it takes a while for the information to actually get to the masses, and then the masses make a shift. And it's very much like your BPA. If you think about BPA and BPA plastics, like it took a huge uproar from mums that we don't want BPA in our baby bottles, and then it kind of got out there. Well, BPA is bad, and then companies reacted and started to take BPA out of the products. It's the same thing with asbestos. You think back on asbestos and things like that. It took a long time for people to get sick, and then they started getting rid of it. So we're very much in terms of, we're in infancy. I mean, we're in infancy, and we're also part of this huge scientific experiment that started in the 50s, and now it's almost 17 years now. But because it takes so long for all these chemicals that they put in food to actually exhibit these health effects that we're seeing, but now they're very clear. You look at things like glyphosate. I mean, glyphosate, it is absolutely clear that this chemical is doing incredible amounts of damage to the gut lining. And hence we're seeing this explosion. In Australia alone, we have a relatively small population, around 23 million. About 10 million of us are suffering from digestive issues. So that is huge. And imagine the US. I don't even want to guess what the numbers are in the US.
I don't know. I can judge by my own self personally, and I can say that, you know what, I didn't realize that the issues that I was having were issues, as stupid as that sounds. Like, now when I look back on it, I certainly had irritable bowel syndrome. There is no way around that. But I'm going to tell you something. I was like, oh, you're not supposed to cry when you poop? I never knew. Like, I just never thought it was a big deal. Like, I just thought, okay, well, you eat, and 20 minutes later, you sit on the toilet and you cry. That's life. That's just how you do. And the thought never occurred to me that it wasn't normal, that it didn't happen to everybody. So I just went about my life like every day, and I never knew that it was a thing. So that's what how do we get that information out there? Because let's be honest, nobody wants to talk about their poop. It's weird and it's uncomfortable. But I'm going to tell you, if you cry when you poo, that's not normal. That is not normal.
I mean, it's a very good point, Dory. You kind of form a baseline. I think health is, you form a certain baseline and you think that's normal. But I think it's only when you fully are living your potential of what your health should be that you realize, oh, man, I wasn't doing so well back then. When I think back 8 years ago, when I was depressed, I was 14 kilos heavier than I am. So I was carrying extremely more weight than I am now. Wasn't feeling good. So not to say that I feel good all the time, but from how I felt then to how I feel now, how I looked then to how I look now is vastly different. And in terms of how do we get the information out there, that's doing these type of things.
Share,
just at
right?
the grassroots level. I mean, having that conversation and forming tribes. It's so good to see that you have a tribe of people that are into the keto world, and I encourage people as well in what I do, and I think then it's just about people caring enough for each other to then take that little nugget of information and planting that seed with others. So that's how the information spreads, and we're so fortunate now that we have social media. Imagine trying to do this 200 years ago. I mean, but now information can get out there really quickly. So
and we have the opportunity to share, right? And from different ends of the world. Here, it's 7 o'clock in the morning where I am. It's 11 o'clock at night where you are. And we're still here together. And everyone watching has the opportunity to help and to share this. Send it to your friends and family. Get the information out there. Because you know what? At this point, I think gut health is kind of the last stop. When you're like, okay, I eat good, I've got rid of my medications, I eat clean, I prepare all my own food, I'm still having issues, I'm still having problems, I'm not losing weight, and I'm seeing that now in my community and in my tribe, that it seems to be the last stop. Like when you're like, okay, I've been doing keto, I'm doing the things, I'm doing all the things, and I'm still not losing weight. But I think we need to get to the point where gut health is a lot further up on the list, that it's not like the dead last thing we're looking at, because I think that if we tackle that first, we're laughing at some of the other stuff.
Totally. I mean, the gut, as Hippocrates said many, many thousands of years ago, all disease literally starts in the gut. It all starts there. I mean, it's 80% of your immune system. I mean, if you look at the gut lining is, you pull out a piece of hair and you cut it in half, and that's the thickness of the gut. So it's this very, very thin membrane that has to allow nutrients to come through from your food, but also keep any bad bacteria and bad organisms out. So all the immune cells are literally stacked up against that gut lining to protect you. So a lot of disease states are typically because the immune system becomes overactive and starts attacking itself. So a lot of these diseases are almost like inflammatory responses because the immune system is not trained properly. So hence, you look at Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, and even heart disease, they're all linked to the gut in some way. So if we do focus on the gut as you're suggesting as a focal point and a starting point, that's going to be your 80-20, your Pareto rule, where you're going to focus your effort to start with. Yes. Not to say that all the other things are not important, but it's a great place to start, to really focus on that gut and get that gut right. And it's very easy to know when your gut's not right. You're crying in the toilet, right? So you got loose bowels, or you can feel it. You actually don't feel good down there. So it's a very obvious thing to give you a signal that something's not right.
So let's do just a quick basic, how should you function? Only just so that people know. Because again, for me, I didn't know. So when you eat, how long should it take before your food processes? Because I know in the 20 minutes my food was in my body before, I got nothing out of that. So how long should we have it in our body before it processes? And then at that point, what should that be like? Because I don't really, we're going to have to talk about what your poo should look like. Sorry, dude. Sorry.
I mean, so you should at least be going to the toilet at least once a day.
Okay.
That's once or twice a day is perfectly normal.
Okay.
And the way we judge, I guess, what your poo should look like, it's called a Bristol stool scale.
Okay.
So people are welcome to Google that, Bristol, Bristol,
okay.
Bristol stool scale.
Okay.
So if you Google that, you'll see there'll be pictures of what the poos should look like.
Okay.
From constipation all the way to diarrhea. So what you're looking at is something in the middle. You're almost looking like, the analogy is like smiley faces.
Okay.
You should be like
soft banana.
Yes, that's what you're looking at. Smooth and flat and smiley face.
Okay.
So that's what you're aiming to achieve. Well, if you're constipated, that's not great.
Okay.
it's a clear indication that you're not having enough water or not having enough fiber.
Okay.
If you're getting diarrhea, all diarrhea is that the gut is inflamed. There's some form of pathogen or something that's irritating the gut, and the gut is essentially trying to flush it out. So that's why you're getting diarrhea. So you should be somewhere in the middle with that nicely formed stool and not experiencing. Farting is normal. You want to fart, so that is a good sign that you're getting enough fiber. The fiber is going to produce like this what we call short-chain fatty acids, butyrate. They're all very beneficial, but they also result in all sorts of gas production. So you want to fart. You don't want to feel bloated and uneasy in the gut. Farting is normal.
I actually know a lady who did internal damage from holding farts too long. As crazy as that sounds, she was out on mission, so she was living with a roommate for 2 months, and she would not allow herself to fart in front of anybody. And after 2 months of not farting, she had a lot of medical issues on the go.
Oh my god.
So it's okay.
Just to clarify that the farts shouldn't smell like rotten egg.
Okay, so it shouldn't clear an entire room. If you're clearing a whole room with your farts, what are you doing wrong?
That's a good sign that there's an imbalance in the gut microbiome, the gut bacteria in there.
Okay.
So it's called, for a term you might not be familiar with, is dysbiosis.
Okay.
Dysbiosis is when there's an imbalance of the bacteria in the gut. You're getting a dominance of the ones that are not so good for you. The good guys are being suppressed, so you're producing hydrogen sulfide, which is like a rotten egg kind of smell.
Okay. Now, here's a weird question. Does that change at all hormonally during pregnancy? Because this is an overshare, but man, when I was pregnant, I had the worst gas, and when that kid came out, he took it with him. Thank God.
Oh, really?
Thank God he took it with him. But it was insane. Like, I could clear a half of a Walmart, and I was like, what? Who did that? That's rude. Who would fart in public like that?
I don't actually know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of experience when it comes to farting.
I couldn't help myself. I had to ask. Oh, awesome. So I see we're coming close on time. So how about for a closing out thought, we discuss where do we go from here? So I've watched this live. Now I know that gut health matters. This is important to me. I need to find out more about this. What step one? I'm getting off of this live and I want to start researching about my gut health. Where do I go first?
Yes. The first thing that needs to be addressed is if you are suffering any, what we call leaky gut. So
yes.
When I teach when I do my courses and I teach people, the first step is to heal and seal. So
okay.
Those junctures in the gut become, like the gap becomes widened.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is make sure those junctures are nice and tight, so they're not letting any things that can form allergies or bad bacteria into the gut. So heal and seal. The way we heal and seal is to firstly take out the inflammatory type of foods. So we're talking FODMAP protocol, GAPS, Clever Guts diet, Michael Mosley's work. It's all excellent. GAPS is very strict. FODMAPs is equally strict as well. Okay. But it's important to follow those protocols for at least a couple of months, just to get out the body's way and allow that natural healing process to happen. And we can also use some supplements. There's some good supplements to use. Colostrum powder is fantastic. Okay. It's actually, in Australia, we're going into some clinical research to show that it's actually sealing that gut lining. Okay. There's another product called Bristol, which is developed in America, which some of the guys might be familiar with, by Zach Bush. It's one of his products, which is also very good. And collagen peptides or collagen powder. Excellent. Pure. Make sure they're both pure, 100% pure, collagen and colostrum. Okay. And preferably from the grass-fed source. Perfect. Those three products are going to help a lot. I hear the term leaky gut a lot. Now, I always referred to it myself, because I'm Dory, as leaky belly button.
because it comes out of the belly button. But if you guys don't know what it is, for me, it burns. Like, it's almost like the liquid that comes out of it is acidic, and it irritates the skin around the belly button. It has a very foul smell to it. And I never knew what it was. Like, I just was like, okay, you clean that with a little peroxide, you put a little polysporin in that, and it goes away. But I think it's, for me, something that flares up, you know, once a month, once every couple of months. It'll flare up for a couple of days. I'll treat it and it'll go away, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm good.
The leaky gut is pretty much, if you think about the large intestine, the colon region.
Okay.
That's essentially what we're referring to.
Okay.
The colon, even parts of the small intestine. Most of the absorption is happening in the small intestine, and then the colon is where most of the actual bacteria live.
Okay.
So majority. So when I say leaky gut, it's mainly in that small intestine and large intestine region. So it's this huge area.
Okay.
We're talking a tennis court surface area inside the gut, where food can actually, you know, the nutrients from the food can actually digest into the body.
Okay.
The bad guys can't get in. So what happens when those junctures get too large, the gaps, you're only talking like it's a cell layer thick. So you've got two cells essentially joined together. Very, very thin membrane. And so when that gap gets too large, things can get through that they're not supposed to get through. So that's what we're trying to do, is tighten up those junctures. And things like gluten can actually really irritate the gut, and it's very abrasive to the gut. That can exacerbate that issue. So, and glyphosate is hugely damaging. So that's what I'm really talking about. Yeah, it's actually happening inside the intestines.
So what is leaky belly button then? Because I just assumed it was the same thing.
leaky belly button is, you educated me on that.
Okay. I don't know what causes it then. I don't know.
The other thing I would say that's very important as well is to heal and seal. Also start to incorporate some FODMAP-friendly prebiotics. So where the science is really headed is towards prebiotics, because what prebiotics are, fibers or fibers that the bacteria can ferment. So the bacteria in the gut can actually break down this fiber into some beneficial things for the body and also for the actual gut cells. So they're actually fuel, like butyrate is an example, which is actually fuel for these gut cells. So they actually fuel them, but they also encourage growth of potential, you know, like good bacteria like bifidobacteria and lactobacilli, which is two peacekeeping bacteria that you really want to encourage in the gut. So heal and seal, get some FODMAP-friendly prebiotics. There's two that I recommend, which is partially hydrolyzed guar gum, which is one, and the second one is acacia fiber. Both those are FODMAP-friendly products. And then once that gut lining is healed and sealed, you're given it a couple of months, you're not experiencing any of this abnormal discomfort, gassing, excessive bloating and all that business, and you're getting good stool formation and good regular stool formation, then you're going to move on to your fermented foods. So things like kefir, kombucha, fermented vegetables, sauerkrauts, kimchis, and you're going to look at making that yourself because they're teeming with good bacteria. And what scientists agree, they're disagreeing on a lot of things at the moment, but what they do agree on is that gut diversity is the most important thing. It makes perfect sense, because if you think about a rainforest or any ecosystem, the ecosystems that are the most healthiest and vibrant are the ones with a diversity of life in them. So since we get into a situation where there's only a handful of species of animals, that ecosystem then is probably not as healthy as one that's bursting with life. Because all these different types of organisms have different functions. Some will produce neurotransmitters that affect the way you feel. Others will help protect your immune system, protect your body. They're forming your defense system. Others will help with weight loss. Others will help with digestion of food, mood. So they're all different. So we want diversity. That's what we all scientists agree upon right now.
Excellent. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I hope we get to do it again. I know our schedules are really crazy with the time change, but if you have time, let me know in a couple weeks or a month. I'd love to do it again and maybe talk about how we map our gut health, and if we're doing a journal, how we do that, because I know I'm going to get flooded with questions from my people, because this is new information for us, and we're going to go nuts. So I know we're definitely going to have questions for you, for sure.
We can do a round two for sure. I'll be happy to.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for getting through the muckle with me. I couldn't figure out why, and it's because I'm not on my page.
I hear you, Dory. I'm so not tech savvy myself. I was like fumbling around my phone trying to make it work myself.
It'll work. Well, thank you so much for your time, for your patience, and for just sharing with us, because we don't know this and we need to. And the more people who know this information, the healthier we're going to be as a whole. So I'm going to say, guys, share it. Share the information. Share your research when you do it. If you guys are starting a gut health journey, share that. Post it in my group. Let us know what you're doing, what you're changing, because we all need to get on this boat. I can feel it